Hi, I'm Ingo from Roast Rebels, and in this video we will connect the Hottop roaster with the free Artisan software. There are two versions of the Hottop roaster. One has the ending plus at the end of its name. I'm also marking it sometimes with Artisan, and the other one hasn't. The version with the plus or with the mark Artisan, it's also the version here with the white buttons, is the one that you can connect to this free software called Artisan. If you have this machine, then I really recommend you using Artisan. The software can look a little bit overwhelming at the beginning. That's why I'm doing this video, to show you exactly the needed functions that you will find in Artisan. There are some different ways of using Artisan. One way is to just record the roasts in Artisan. Like that, you're doing your roast on the machine. You have all the safety functions, the supporting functions that the Hottop team did for you. You do a safe and nice roast on the machine, but you record this roast in Artisan, where you have all the different informations like bean temperature, environmental temperatures, the setting, the rate of rise, roast development percentage, but you can also add a lot of other information to the roast. You can add information about the cupping profile, about the roast in general. So you have a database of roasts which is helping you to further develop your roasting skills and then fine-tune your profiles. I really recommend you to do this, and in particular if you start with the machine, this is also the way I would recommend you to use Artisan. The other way to use Artisan is that you're taking full control on the machine from the software. If you use these settings, then all the safety and support functions of the machine are switched off. So it's fully in your responsibility to safely operate the machine. You will be responsible to have a look at the power settings of the machine, of the cooling, of the trays. I'm going to show you that in general, just for you to know the safety functions are off if you're doing a control with Artisan. But on the other hand, you have then the full possibilities and you're doing it as a commercial professional roaster. You're doing the same kind of operations on your machine, just in a little bit a smaller scale. And then there is a third way of using Artisan, which are the alarms, which are the automations, where you do programs in Artisan, and then with these programs you can control your roaster so that you get always the same kind of roast, that you have a programmed roasting profile. In this video, I'm going to show you the first two parts. I'm going to show you how to record roasts in Artisan, how to control your machine with Artisan, and then for the third part, for the alarms, there is a specific video where we're going in detail into that. But now I would say let's start, and I switch over to my computer. You can download the Artisan software for free here on this website, artisanscope.org. You can click on Install Now, and here you're choosing the latest release. And if you go down, you see on Assets the downloads. You find a file for Linux, a file for Mac, and a file for Windows. So you see, for example, it's a zip file, so you download it, you extract the file, and then you will have the setup file which you can just click on, and then Artisan is being installed on your computer. So that's super easy. And then when it's on your computer and you open it, will show something like that, or maybe it will look a little bit different. In fact, we are going through the different settings so that you have everything set up. But you will realize if you're going to have a look at Artisan, or if you already have worked with Artisan, that it's an incredibly powerful software. It's even a free software, as you probably know. It's incredibly powerful. There is probably no function a roaster ever needed that's not to be found in Artisan. And while this is on one hand really nice service by this team who is developing this software, it can be on the other hand a bit overwhelming because it's just so much in it. But what I will show you now are those functions that you really need. So I would recommend you to start with those functions that I'm going to show you in these videos. And then when you feel comfortable, when you're up to discover new things, you can go in the various settings, and you will also find here on the Artisan website this quick start guide, and on the quick start guide there is descriptions for all the different tools that you have. So you see, in addition to what we are going to work with, you also find some designer tools, comparator, wheel, and so on and so on. But don't think too much about it now, but when you're up to experiences, then have a look at those as well. But now we are in the Artisan software. I'm going to show you through the different menus, but what you are going to do at the beginning is do the first basic setup, and then everything is installed as you like. So what we are going to do at the beginning is go to configuration, and here you find the language. So for example, I have German installed. You find many languages here that you can choose. So we are going to change it now to English. It's going to do a restart in English. So now we have everything in English. Second things that you are going to do also on config is to check how the temperature is being measured. So you see you have a Fahrenheit mode or a Celsius mode. The one that's active is muted. So for example, I'm working with Celsius, therefore I can click here, I cannot choose anything. I could change it to Fahrenheit, but I don't want to. I'm staying at Celsius. But if you're from the US, you can change it to Fahrenheit. So then you have everything in general set up. The third thing that you can do is go on config, choose your machine, and here you see you have all the different kind of machines Artisan has been prepared to work with, and you are going to choose the Hottop roaster, your model, configure for Hottop KN-8828B-2K+, and then it will override the settings. You choose the port, the USB port, where you have, in general, you just don't choose this one here, you choose the one that's starting with COM. There your machine is installed. And now everything is set up for the Hottop, which is actually a nice thing because the Hottop and Artisan, both teams have been working very closely together. So Artisan is really beautifully set up for the Hottop roaster, as you will see when we go a bit further into the details. But now I'm going to show you through the menus. So here, file, you know this from other softwares. You can choose a new file, new project. You can open one, go to your folder to open one, or just open a recent one. So, for example, I'm taking this profile that I recently did, and then I can see the roast of this profile that I did the last time. I'm going to show you through all those details a bit later. But so you can open a previous roast, you can import it from various other programs. You can import it from Artisan files, but also Ailio, Cropster, Gießen, Loring, Probat, Rosepath, Mill City. So you can import files from other programs into Artisan. You can save as, export it in different ways, Excel, Artisan files. You can convert to. So yeah, if you're in the US and you're talking to friends in Europe or the other way around, you can change your profile in the temperature settings. You can convert it to an Excel, but you can also convert it to a picture. But actually a nice thing that you might be using when you're active in coffee boards or Facebook groups or whatever, then you can go on Save Graph, and you could save this graph here as a JPEG, PNG, whatever, so that you can upload it to groups and talk with other people around. There are even presets for different groups like Home Barista, Kaffeenetz in the German world, Coffee Geek, so you have presets for the right picture settings, which is really a nice service by the team. Even for Facebook or Instagram, if you want to show your roast on Instagram and share it with your friends, then you can directly download it in the specification that's needed for that. If you go to report, that's even a bit more detailed. If you do, for example, a PDF report of your roast, you will have the roast, what's happening, but you will also have some details about the beans. So I'm going to show you what kind of information you can put in the system, and this information will be on the report as well. You can print, quit Artisan, edit. You have the possibility for copy and paste, cut, so that you know from other softwares as well. And now we're going to an important menu step, which is the roast menu. In the roast menu, you can choose properties, and then you can add some more information about this roast. So you could say, for example, this roast here is properties. Then you can say which beans did I use, for example, a Kenya SL28. You can put in how much beans that you used when roasted, when green. I mean, how many you put in the roaster. In that roast it was indeed 200 grams. You could say, okay, I had 182 grams after the roast, so I had a decrease of 9%. I even don't know the English expression. Actually, in German we call it Einbrand, so the burn rate, something like that. But that's the weight loss that you had in this roast. You can put settings for volume, density, moisture, green, roasted. You can add the color of the bean. So for the whole beans, for the ground beans, you can set which measurement equipment you're using. Is it Tonino scales? Is it Actron, colorette, whatever? The ambient condition, so how warm was it, the pressure. Then here you have a calculator, which is actually nice. Here you can do density calculations and put those as an information to the roast. Let me just state, if you're now a bit overwhelmed with all of that information, this is something that's absolutely not necessary to do. You can add as many information as you want, but you don't have to. So if this is already a bit too much for now, ignore it and have a look at it later. If you like to have detailed notes about your roast, just be aware that you can put in a lot of information here. You can do some notes on the roast. You can say, was it low first crack, heavy first crack, light cut, dark cut, drops oily, uneven, if they're tipping or scorching. All of that you can click here, or then add roasting notes, cupping notes. The events is all that has happened in the roast. So for example, at 4 minutes 30, when bean temperature was 133.9, the airflow was changed to 10. All of this can be seen here. You could also copy this. You can create alarms out of this. We will have a look at alarms in another session. And here, energy, the machine or Artisan is actually calculating the energy consumption of your machine. So for example, the Hottop, when it's working on 100%, is consuming 750 watts. And then Artisan is just measuring how many time have you spent with what power settings, and is then extrapolating the amount of kilowatt hours that you supposed to have used for this roast. Setup, here you can say which was the organization, roast rebels, operator. Ingo was operating this roast on a Hottop B-2K+. The heating was electric. You could choose propane, natural gas. Drum speed is fixed with the Hottop, so we don't set anything here. And yeah, that's actually more or less it. One thing you could add in these properties is, you see I don't have these buttons here, because I just sometimes add information here and then I do it manually. But you could also say, open these windows when I charge the bean, or open these windows when I drop the beans, so that automatically this window is being opened when one of these events is happening, so that you can add your information and don't forget to add this information. That's really a nice feature. Another nice feature is here cup profile, because here you can then add the information about the cupping scores. So they are in German here now with me, but this would be something like acidity, aftertaste, clarity, floral. You can choose actually, or you can even change and put in whatever you like to. These are recommendations from the Artisan team. You can put in your values, and then you have a cupping score for your bean, which is really nice. Another thing is the background, and we're going to have a look at this in another video. It's also a nice feature where you can put another roast in the background of the current roast that you're doing, a bit in lighter color, so that you can compare roasting profiles while doing roasts. Switch profiles, switch ETBT is something I'm never using. Configuration, so you have the machine. This is really the important part where you're setting up everything for your machine, and then Artisan is taking the correct settings for your machine. Device ports, there are different things that you can configure here. I wouldn't care too much about it. You can do your rate of rise settings. You can actually then smoothen the rate of rise a little bit, or so that it's looking nicer for Instagram. Events and alarms, that's a nice feature, but we are going to have a look at this in another video. Especially alarms is important for you. Phases, statistics, access here, teams, you can use, you can change Artisan so that it looks like roast time by Ailio. Just a little thing to play around. If you don't like the visual look of Artisan, but that's the classic Artisan look. So you see you can change quite a lot here. Important for you, as I said, are these three settings that you did, and a nice feature is these alarms for program roasts, which we are going to have a look at in another video. Tools, then here we are really then in the playground where you can do a lot of designing curves, graphs, simulations. Transposer is if you want to transpose your BT curve to another roasting machine so that you can actually then work on profiles for other roasters. Convert to Fahrenheit or Celsius, you have a calculator. So we are not going to go into this in this video, but we are going to have a look at this view, which is important for you, because here you can set what you are going to see on the screens. So do you want to see controls? You want to see readings? I would say you want to see readings. Events editor is something I'm never using, but buttons and sliders is something that's important for you when you're using Artisan to control your roast. When you're using Artisan to just have a look at your roast and record them, then you don't need that. If you're controlling your roast from Artisan, then you're going to need that. But more about this later in this video. As you will see, there are these two functions of using Artisan, which is on one hand just use it to record roasts, and the other one is to use it to control your roaster. But as I said, we're going to have a look at that later in this video. Main LCD, Delta LCDs, these are things that you don't really need, in my opinion. Help about Artisan, link to the documentation, errors, messages, settings. If you have something really crazy in your Artisan and you really don't know what happened and why everything is wrong, then you might do a factory reset and then start from the scratch again. So now we are going into those two different ways of using Artisan. One thing is that you are controlling your roast directly on your machine, as you would do without Artisan, but you're controlling your roast on the machine and you just use Artisan to record your roast. And this is actually the way I would recommend you at the beginning. If you're not 100% sure about everything you're doing, this will be the safest way. So you have still all the safety features that Hottop is providing, and you can do still your nice roasts directly in the machine. You have all the safety functions, but you're going to record the roast on your computer, so that you can actually then develop your roasting skills and your profiles. The other one is that you are then using Artisan to completely take over control of your roaster. If you do that, then you have the full responsibility for taking care of the burner settings, airflow settings, that the doors are open, doors are closed, so you're fully responsible when you're taking over the control by Artisan. But on the other hand, you then also have the complete freedom, and then you're in a way roasting the way a commercial professional roaster is working on his machine. We are going into detail now for the first scenario, which is roasting directly at the machine and recording it in Artisan. And therefore, I would do a reset here. I don't need this profile, so that I have a fresh Artisan. I'm going to start my roaster as I'm usually doing it when doing a roast. I'm going to preheat the machine now. I activate Artisan. And now I can see how Artisan is taking over the data that the roaster is providing them with. So you see the ET, environmental temperature, is shown here, the bean temperature is shown here, the rate of rise is shown here as delta BT. For those who don't know what the rate of rise is, so the rate of rise is actually in this current situation, or at that timing point where you have a look at it, how much the temperature is increasing in degrees per minute. So it's kind of showing the speed your roast is in. I can see now the burner is working with 100%, as it usually does in preheat. Airflow is at 0, which is also normal for preheat. And I see this value here, but I don't see any recording in this Artisan graph. And the reason for that is that we didn't yet start to record. We will start the recording if we press on this button start, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to already record while it's preheating. We are going to press start shortly before we are going to put in the beans. So at the moment we just wait until the machine is preheated. You see also here airflow is on 0, burner is on 100. So these you can't, you can play around with them, but nothing is happening because now we are not in the control mode, we're just in the recording mode. So they are showing what the machine is doing, but you cannot change anything on the machine here from the computer. Also, all of these settings here are not relevant for you now when you're using it just to record the roast. These are only relevant for you when you're controlling the roast. So also what you see here, that's all not relevant for you when you're just recording the roast in Artisan. This information, these buttons here, they're only relevant when you're controlling the roast from Artisan. So yeah, now let's wait until the roast is being preheated. And then here, to show you how this graph is working, you have a temperature scale in now degrees Celsius. So the higher here, the higher the temperature is, the further right here, the further the time is. I have 0 to 10 minutes, but it's going to change when the roast is going to be longer. And then on the other hand, you have the rate of rise here. So you will later then see the curves, that rate of rise here in Celsius per minute. You have probably seen that there is a number here. So what this is showing is if I'm with the mouse on any point on Artisan, which is then of course interesting if I have a curve and I'm going to analyze the curve, it's going to show me at each point of this graph what temperature and what time it is. So this point here would be 2 minutes 35 and 86.1 degrees Celsius. But as said, this is of course not interesting now on an empty screen. It's going to be interesting when we are going to have a look at the curves on the screen. So now we see we're at BT 130 degrees Celsius. We're having the machine preheated now. And now I can start my roast. I wait maybe a little bit until 140 degrees. Depending on the bean, I'm usually choosing a preheat temperature of, let's say, 140 to 160 degrees Celsius. To record the roast, I'm pressing on start, and now you see Artisan is recording everything. I'm taking my beans. I'm charging my roaster. And you can see Artisan is now starting to record the roast. I'm going to wait for a couple of seconds until there is more to see, and then I'm going to show you all the different things that are happening here on the screen. So now we're a couple of seconds in the roast, and I'm going to show you now what you are seeing here on the screen. You have this dark blue curve, and this is the curve of your BNT probe. So you see in dark blue, the BNT probe is now at 89 degrees Celsius, which is recorded here as a little dot. The ET is now at 174 Celsius, which is recorded here. So you see the curve of the environmental temperature of the BT. You see the rate of rise, which is at the beginning of the roast. It's starting to be recorded after turning point, then it's increasing, and then it's supposed to fall during the roast. You could also show a rate of rise for the environmental temperature. I'm not doing that. I don't see a lot of sense in that, but you could do it. And what you are up to do now is changing the setting of your roast on the machine. So for example, give it a little bit of fan. And you see the changes that I did on the machine are being showed here. So I set the fan now on 20%. And you see also this little dot, which is showing the change that I did with the settings at the machine. I can show you what's happening if I, for example, go down with the burner to 90. You see I have these little dots, and it's always showing me what I'm going to do at the machine. But now I'm going back to 100. I'm doing a quick roast here. It's a Kenyan very dense bean. You see that the machine showed here that we are charging. So the machine understands, so it's not actually the machine, it's Artisan. Artisan understands at what point we charged the roast, because here the temperature was dropping dramatically. And Artisan is also automatically calculating the turning point and marking the turning point. So you can see here, turning point at 1 minute 04, 82 degrees Celsius, and then it was going on in the roast. What I would have to do now is putting markers for the dry end, which I'm not going to do. I don't see it as too relevant, but if you want to, you could set here your dry end point. What's really important for you to do is the first crack marker, which is then starting to measure the development time of the roast. So first crack start is something you absolutely have to mark. You can also mark the end of the first crack, the second crack start. Then when the roast is finished, you're going to click on this drop so that Artisan knows what's happening in the roast. And now we just go on roasting, and you can see here how the rate of rise is developing, is falling from the top down, how the BT curve is developing. But I think it's a nice thing is this projection here of the steepness of the curve. This is actually giving you very similar information to the rate of rise. It's showing you how fast the roast is going at the moment, so how steep this PT curve is or the ET curve is. And that's actually something that I think might even have more use than the rate of rise, because it's immediately showing you how quickly the roast is developing. Now we're going a little bit down with the burner. Now we already hear some first pops, the first crack, but it's still a bit early. It's not really first crack yet. Now we hear first crack starting, marking the start of first crack. And when you marked first crack, you see here that this number is appearing. This is the development time percentage, which means this is measuring how much time has happened from marking the first crack to now, divided by the whole time of the roast from charge until now. Development time percentage is a figure Scott Rao has brought up to the table, and recommended to land somewhere at 20% development time of your roasts. It's depending a little bit on how light or dark you're roasting, but a lot of roasters are using this development time percentage figure. So now you can actually have it immediately recorded and say, for example, okay, I want to go up to 16% with my light Kenyan roast. So I'm waiting here until the development time percentage is at 16%, and then I'm going to end the roast. So yeah, let's say now I'm at 16%. I'm finishing the roast by pressing the red button on the roaster, and at the same time I will then have to click this drop button on Artisan to mark that the roast has ended. Now the hot top is cooling the roast. As you can see here, burner is on 0, air is on 100, and I can switch off the recording, and then I have everything shown here. So again, the dark blue is the PT curve, the red is the environmental temperature curve, the blue is the rate of rise. This setting here is the burner settings that I used to do. The blue one are the airflow settings that I used to do. And then here you see a division of the roast. And this was the first crack that I marked by hand at 177 BT, 7.408 minutes. And you see I landed at the end at 18% development time percentage. And here the share would have been calculated if I would have marked the dry end. Here it just used a preset of Artisan, which was configured here in phases, where I can then do presets of my phases. So it's set at 141, drying is ending, and it's going into my yard. But as I said, I'm usually not having a look at this. Development time is important, hold time of your roast is important, the curves are important, and yeah, that's it. Here I can see when I did the roast, it's 200 grams of beans. I could add the properties. This was indeed a Kenya washed SL28. I say it was a Hottop Artisan tutorial in English #1. I'll add some more information as you have seen. Now that's saved. So that's it for the first part of this tutorial, where you show how to use Artisan to record a roast. And now we are going to have a look at the other way you could use Artisan, and this is to control the roast using Artisan. So now the second way to use Artisan is controlling the machine from Artisan. That for I start the same, I connect the machine. I did the configuration here by choosing the Hottop roaster. Therefore, I'm switching it on, and what I have to do now is press on control, but I'm not yet allowed to go into this mode. But what I have to do first is to activate the super user mode with a right click on the LCD timer. I did a right click here in this timer, and now the super mode is on. The reason why I have to do that is when you're now actively taking control of your roaster, you lose all those safety functions and you're 100% self-responsibility for the use of the roaster. So it could, for example, happen to you that you forget that burner settings are on 100, and then your machine might even burn. So be careful what you're going to do here. But now, as I activated the super mode, I can click on control. And what you will realize now is that the machine, the control of the machine, looks a little bit different. It now turned green, and there is a USB sign. There is no time there anymore. It's just showing the bean temperature, environmental temperature, fan and heat settings. So with that, you can realize that you're now in the mode where you have taken control over the roaster. So what you can do now is, with this settings here, change, for example, the airflow. With this lever here, you can change the burner settings. And then you have some buttons here that I mentioned before. So you can turn on the motor, or you can turn it off. That's the drum, so turn the drum, the motor on. That's the door where the beans are falling to your cooling tray. So make sure this is closed during the roast, because otherwise the beans would fall directly as green beans to your cooling tray. That's the steerer of the cooling tray. You can turn it on or off. Here, again, you can also change the airflow and the burner settings here if you want. You have both options. So that's it. Now we are doing the same as we did before, but just self-controlled. So make sure motor is on, door is closed, steerer can be off now, and now I'm putting the burner to 100. I'm doing a preheat until, let's say, 140 degrees Celsius. So now I have the burner on 100. I'm putting energy into the roaster. I'm starting the recording of this roast, and I'm putting in the beans. And also here in this mode, you will see that Artisan recognized the charging of the beans. So I'm just starting the roast, controlled by Artisan now, putting a little bit of air into the roast, setting it on 2. And now, in fact, it's the same as before, just that I'm not controlling the roaster on the machine, but here in Artisan. Now you see we're already further in the roast. We're approaching first crack. So yeah, I can change burner settings, airflow settings here. I can mark the first crack here. And that's the way I'm controlling this roast until it's being finished, where I then am going to press this drop button, which then is doing everything that's needed to release the beans and cool them. Now I'm again approaching this 16% development time, going down a little bit with the burner. And when I'm at 16%, I'm just pressing this drop button, and magically the roaster is dropping the beans, it's cooling the machines, and it's also marking here the drop point. And again, I can now switch off the Artisan recording And then I have the full roast here with my rate of rise, my BT curve, and everything recorded. Just that in that case I did everything by myself manually. So I'm going to save this again as a Hottop tutorial English 2. And that's it. That's the way you use Artisan in the main functions. I'm going to show you in a separate video two other functions. One is the background function, and the other thing is the alarm feature of Artisan, which is the way you are going to make automations to your roast. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you want to know more about the Hottop roaster, then have a look at the other videos in our channel as well. Don't forget to subscribe and like our channel not to miss anything. We're also publishing a lot of information about roasting, interviews with experts, background information on green coffee, on roasting. So look that you don't miss anything by liking and subscribing to our channel. And if you have any more questions about the machines, about roasting in general, then always come back to me. You find my contact on roastrebels.com.